Welcome back, everybody, this week in America. Thank you for joining us on the program today. Toni Jones Tucker calls herself a survivor. And when you read her autobiography, Life Got in the Way, My Babies Were Taken From Me, you'll see that's an accurate description. Her book was written to inspire, give faith, hope, and a sense of freedom to others, no matter how great their storm. Toni is a mother, grandmother, lived what she calls a hard life, including having to bury her 22-year-old daughter. Through it all, she struggled. Today, successful, married to a friend she's known since they were 17, Toni Jones Tucker, author of Life Got in the Way, My Babies Were Taken From Me, is our guest on This Week in America. Hi, Toni. Welcome to the program. It's great to have you with us today.
Hi, Rick. Thank you, and I'm glad to be here today.
This is such an inspirational story because of all that you've gone through. And let's start with the basic question. Why did you write the book, and who do you hope you're able to help by writing the book?
Excuse me. I wrote the book because of what I went through, and I knew that it was other women out there that have been probably in the same or similar situation that I've been in. So I decided to write to inspire others and let them know that no matter what storm they're going through, if they keep their faith in God, no matter how long it is, that God will see them through their storm.
Talk about the challenges in doing this, the difficulty in doing this. In the book, you're very, very honest. You were laying it all out there, where you were, where you are now, how you got there, the route that you took. Talk about, in writing the book, what that experience was like for you, because as I say, you're very honest in the book. You put your whole life story out there.
Yes, it was hard, and it was times when I wanted to give up, and I decided that I didn't want to write the book because I didn't know if I really wanted to put my life out there like that. And then I said, well, I am no longer ashamed of my past, and I figured that my past and my story could help others. So I decided to be honest and tell everything. And there were times when I cried when I was writing it, because it was very difficult for me to write it. But I did it because I knew God wanted me to write this book and get my story out.
It has to be very rewarding now that you've done this and you've touched other people, the fact that you've taken what were certainly negatives in your life. You came out of those spirals. You're a better person today because of it, and now able to help other people. That has to make you feel good that what you went through, what you survived, is a tool for other people to go through and survive similar situations.
Yes.
And you are touching many people with the book, Life Got in the Way, My Babies Were Taken From Me. Toni Jones Tucker is our guest on the program. The book is available at BookVenture, Amazon, Barnes & Noble. You can link on directly by going to our website, thisweekinamerica.us. Let's go back to the beginning. And you had life in the projects, and you said that they were very tough for you. Let's go back to what that was like in the projects in Little Rock. Talk about that, because you describe it basically in the book as the beginning of a nightmare for you.
Yes, it was. When I was little, I was growing up in the projects, and it was very hard for me because I was tormented, I was bullied, and we were very poor, and and I ended up with, situations that happened to me where I ended up with 3 babies at the age of 18. And, I was, raped, and I was in an abusive marriage before it, and it was just so horrible for me.
Well, and you talk and you can feel the pain as you're trying to go to school. You're being beaten going and coming from school, to the point when bullied, to the point where you really didn't even want to go to school, did you?
No, actually, I quit going to school. I started skipping school, because, getting beat up every day is a hard thing.
It is difficult to go through, and we feel that pain as we're reading the book, Life Got in the Way, My Babies Were Taken From Me. Talk about the relationship with your mother. It's an interesting dynamic that you have there. You talk about her started drinking. She had a relationship with an uncle. Later, she's trying to help you get your babies back. Talk about the relationship that you had with your mom.
Yes, my mom, she did drink a lot, and it was times that she would, leave and go out and party, and we wouldn't have food at home. But after my babies were taken, my mom, she did get her life together and try to help me get my kids back together, and she did everything. And we have a good relationship now. I love my mom, and she's a very strong woman. She has accomplished a lot. She's come a long way. She's older now, but we still see each other. I talk, I go visit her, and she's good.
Well, it's interesting reading that relationship that you had, and I mean, just about everybody can relate because your relationship changes with relatives. Everybody goes through periods. She was going through great difficulties, as you were, made some bad decisions along the way. And you mentioned that at a very early age you had 3 children. Talk about that. The first was born in December 7th, 1979. You were 14 years old at the time with the first baby.
Yes, I was. I was 13 when I got pregnant with him, but it wasn't a volunteer. Like I said in my book, I was, it's like sex was forced on me. At that time, I was only 13-year-old by an older man because like I said in my book, I had ran away from home, and I ended up getting pregnant by my rapist.
Well, and then you describe what happens. You mentioned the 3 children. You're working for the Job Corps in Texas. Talk about what happened to the point where the children are taken away from you.
Yes, I was 17 years old, and I was in job courts trying to better myself so my children wouldn't have to be raised in the projects and go through what I went through. And while I was in job courts, my babies were taken from me from an incident that happened over the weekend. My oldest son were hit in the head with a brick from another little boy while they were outside playing, and it was on a Friday. And they were with my mother, and she didn't take him to the doctor, but she cleaned it up and put a Band-Aid on it. And the kids, went on and started back playing. But when she sent them to daycare that Monday, they didn't send my kids back.
And you talk about with the Job Corps, it's like, I've got to go get my kids, and they basically said, if you leave, you're gone. You're finished with the program.
Yes, and they didn't let me back, and I never went back.
During this period, and our guest on the program is Toni Jones Tucker. The book is called Life Got in the Way, My Babies Were Taken from Me. It's available wherever books are sold across the country, of course. Book Venture, Amazon, BarnesandNoble.com. You can go to our website, thisweekinamerica.us, and link on directly. During this period, to say that you went through some hardships is probably understating what you went through. Talk about the drugs and the alcohol, the cocaine problem, and what basically living for a while in Skid Row in Los Angeles, I understand.
Yes, I had lost a job and lost my home, so I went on. Didn't want to go to live with family, and I didn't. My last thing I wanted to do was go back to Little Rock, Arkansas. And so I didn't want to ask anybody for anything. So I went to Skid Row in downtown Los Angeles, California. And I lived there for about 3 or 4 months. I slept out on the sidewalk at times. Yes.
And you're about 25 years old and you attempt suicide. Talk about getting to that point where I don't want to live this life anymore. Talk about getting to that point of even seriously contemplating suicide.
Yes, I was so frustrated about my life, trying to find my babies, couldn't find them, and I just felt so alone and had been through so much till I just decided I didn't want to live anymore. So I tried to take my life.
And in the book you describe, and the book is Life Got in the Way, My Babies Were Taken from Me, going through that, and you turn to the drugs and the alcohol and living on the street, and you ended up realizing that God was there and God had a plan for you. Talk about how God entered your life and the impact that had and how that really, really changed you.
Yes, even when I was going through all my storms through all the years, I always had this voice in my head, and it was like God was always there with me. That's why I couldn't never completely give up. And I just, kept going, and I knew that, and then I would be like in and out of church, and then when I got back in church, and it was like as I was listening to every time I went to church, and it was always like things that Pastor T.D. Jakes, my Bishop T.D. Jakes, my pastor, it was like he was things that he would say were like they were always meant for me, and it was just on me so tough. And I said, I'm gonna go ahead on and finish this book, because I had started writing it and I quit, and I said I'm gonna go ahead and finish this book because God wants my story to get out here, because I know it's gonna help inspire and encourage other people. Because my story, I feel like my story needed to be told.
It is a story that needs to be told, that will inspire others. Life got in the way. My babies were taken from me. The babies were taken from you, given up for adoption, and you're going through a difficult period, but you realize God has a plan. Things start turning around in your life, and you realize you've got a little extra money. You consider it a blessing from God that you've got some extra money. You hire a private detective to try to find your children. Talk about that, because it really didn't take that long once you got a private detective that you got a phone call that changed your life.
Oh, yes, and it was like one of the happiest days of my life. I had, and yes, I hired the private investigator, and they found them in like maybe 2 to 3 months, I think it were, and I was so happy, and I was like, wow, I've been searching all these years, and I never could find them, and it was just like such a blessing, and I just knew that it was just, God said it was time. It was time.
You talked to the adoptive parents, and I mentioned the phone call. You're traveling with your husband, and you're elated. He's got to pull off the side of the freeway so you can have a celebration because you're out driving.
Yes. Yes, I had to have him to pull over because
we got to get out of the car and do some dancing here, because this is the call that I've been waiting for. I mean, you got a big smile on your face as you're reading that in the book, Life Got in the Way, My Babies Were Taken from Me. Toni Jones Tucker, the author and our guest on the program. What was it like when you were able to reach out and they reached back? You have the adoptive parents that get in contact with you, and you have your children that get in contact with you. They're now back in your life. What was that moment like when you're able to reconnect after literally several decades?
Oh, it was such a beautiful, happy moment. We cried together and everything, and we all were just so happy to finally, and they were saying the same thing that I said, finally, because they said they had been looking for me too for years, and that's all they ever wanted was me. And it was just, I'm crying.
Well, yeah, and I mentioned in the beginning how through all of the struggles, life is good for you now. Ups and downs, I'm sure, like we all go through, but life is good for you. Talk about your husband, Bruce, described him as soulmate. He really came into your life at the right time, didn't he? Because he's been a beacon for you.
Yes, I feel like he was God sent.
Yes. And life is good. You've got your children, you've got his children. Everything is going in the right direction. You said you were very lucky that you were able to marry your best friend. At the end of the book, you end up home at last, home at last. Thank God Almighty, they are home at last. It has to be such a fulfilling experience for you to go through the downs that you went through to the point of, I'm going to end my life, to now basically you pulled your life back together.
Yes, oh, yes.
Yeah, and you can feel the excitement as you're reading the book. And one of the messages you have in there is you're saying basically to people, don't give up, don't lose faith, because you didn't, and you were able to pull things back together. That's really been a key to your life, hasn't it? Especially in the later years as you look for your children. You just didn't give up. You persevered.
Yes, sir. I just couldn't give up. And I tell people every day, I tell them, don't give up. Whatever you do, keep your faith in God and don't give up, because it no matter how long the years, because like I told them, it was a 32-year journey for me, and it was hard. And I went through, things like I said with alcohol and drugs and giving up and thinking I'm never going to find them again, and then this big old hole in my heart that, just felt like I really can't explain it, but but I kept my faith no matter what I went through and how long it took. And at the end, God, He was right there. He was right there the whole time. He just had, things that I had to go through, And I just tell people, keep your faith. Don't ever give up.
And you sort of words of encouragement: live, laugh, and love. Those are sort of words that get you through the day-to-day activities now.
Yes, it is. It is.
Yeah, talk about, because I love your laugh. Talk about the power of laughter in getting through this too. To put things in perspective, realize there is a plan bigger than you, and just being able to adapt. Laughter's got to be a big part of your life as well.
Yes, it is. I try to laugh every day. And, but, even, life, you still go through things in life, but even in the negative, I try to look at the positive, and I try to live, and I try to laugh, and I just, love, because, laughter is a good thing. Laughter is a good thing.
In the book, you say, I'm not perfect, but I'm learning to enjoy every day. And you have every reason to, and it certainly sounds like you're, in fact, doing that. The book is called Life Got in the Way. My Babies Were Taken from Me, a very inspirational and motivational book written by our guest on the program, Toni Jones Tucker. The book is available at bookventure.com in the bookstore. Also available, of course, at Amazon, barnesandnoble.com. Link on to our website, thisweekinamerica.us, and you can get all of the information on Toni's book. Toni, it is an inspiring story. Very courageous of you to share that story, because you're going to be helping a number of people get through similar situations. Thank you so much for being with us on the program.
Oh, you're very welcome, and thank you.
You're welcome. Toni Jones Tucker. Yeah, it's an excellent read. Life Got in the Way. My Babies Were Taken from Me. Toni Jones Tucker, our guest and the author. Information, of course, at our website, thisweekinamerica.us. And the program continues right after these messages.